Have you been experiencing an uneasy feeling about the modern church? Do you sense that there is something very wrong within the body of believers? Have you found yourself questioning the things that you've been taught about Scripture? Are you bothered by a nagging sense that much of what you were taught is lacking or worse, wrong? Do you feel lost? Are you looking for more? If you've been experiencing any of these feelings, you are among friends here. We felt the same way at one time. We can relate to the prophet Jeremiah when he wrote, "Our fathers have inherited nothing but lies, worthless things in which there is no profit." This is Jeremiah 16:19. We, too, felt lost until we started tearing down the teachings and traditions of man and started to study Scripture for ourselves. And in its original, ancient Near East, Torah-observant Hebrew context. When we started to study Scripture in its ancient context, our faith started to change. We came alive, and we found ourselves drawn back to the ancient paths. This is what Yahweh says: stand by the ways and seek and ask for ancient paths, where the good way is, and walk in it. Then you will find a resting place for your souls. But they said, we will not walk in it. This is Jeremiah 6:16. The Scriptures call this ancient path the way. This show is dedicated to serving the kingdom of Yahweh by sharing what we have learned about the way with others. We are aware that there are many other voices out there making similar claims. We just feel that many of those voices are seeking something other than to serve the kingdom, and that they do nothing but cause more confusion as a result. We make no claim to special revelation or anointing. We just try to avoid adding to the confusion by focusing on the Father, His Son, and their kingdom. We are lay people, but we are not without the necessary skills to do proper research. We do believe that Torah still applies to the believer, but we are not part of the Hebrew Roots movement. In fact, most Hebrew Roots groups would reject us. This is because we recognize that Torah is more than just the law of Moses. We are under the new covenant, and with a change in the covenant, there was a change in the way Torah applies to the believers. Search the Scriptures and pray for the wisdom necessary to better understand how the covenant has changed and how these changes govern the way Torah is to be applied to the life of the believer. Then, we try to live, as best we can in our modern world, according to these changes described and lived out by the Messiah and his apostles. And in everything we do, we strive to serve the Father, His Son, and their kingdom by serving other believers and helping to make stronger disciples as we go.
Good morning. Welcome to We Who Are Lost. Today is Friday, August 7th, 2026. I'm your host, Joe Bakanovic. Today we will be continuing in our book study, J.H. Allen's book of Judah's Sceptre and Joseph's Birthright. Before we get going, you have to remember that we are in the last 3 chapters of this book. We've been at this study for a while. Allen has brought a lot of scriptural and prophetic evidence to us up to this point. So if you're just stumbling across this, a lot of it might not seem to make sense to you and you might disagree with it. But understand that you're deep into this argument, this theological argument. Also, there's one other thing I want to remind us of. Allen is writing in 1903, folks. So he doesn't, this is before World War I and World War II. So there are things going on in the world that he's not quite, that afterwards that he's not aware of at this time. So when we get to a certain part of this chapter, I will explain why I disagree with him. But if he had the benefit of what we know at the time he was writing this, excuse me, just a second here. If he had the benefit of what we know now, if he'd have known that, he might have had a different conclusion. All right, chapter 8, the Israelitish and Anglo-Saxon emblems. Now, a lot of people won't put a lot of credibility into this. You need to. These emblems are spiritual in nature and meaning. They stick with the people that they're assigned to in Scripture. All throughout history, they stay with them. It's one of the ways you can identify who you're dealing with. Allen says, now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. This is a souvenir of this coat, or souvenir of this coat of many colors, which Jacob made for Joseph, is still found in the many-colored plaid as worn by Scottish Highlanders, not only at home, but by the Highlander Society, which exists in nearly every large Anglo-Saxon city. So he's saying that the plaid colors of the Scottish is a remnant of Joseph's coat of many colors. And a lot of people say that's a leap. Well, taken only on its own in a vacuum, yes, it's a leap. Alan is not taking this on its own in a vacuum. He continues, the use of this van-colored plaid and the custom of wearing it can be traced as far back as the Scottish people have any history, and that's over 1,000 years, folks. And yet its origin among them is unknown. That is, it was unknown until they began to know that they were the descendants of Joseph. Now, a lot of people are going to tell you that this whole theory of the British Israel and the two houses and the prophecies of Ephraim, Joseph, and everything are all just hooey balooey. And if you've been with this study the whole time and Alan has not yet made his case, okay, fine. Class dismissed for you. Nothing's going to convince you. But I'm going to tell you right now, as far as I'm concerned, from reading scripture with a different perspective, Alan is not off in left field. He is right. He may be slightly misinterpreting it, but he is in the center of the path. He is tracing prophecy better than anybody or any other theory or any other school of eschatology I have ever read. He's on target. That's why I brought this book to y'all. In my opinion, this is an essential understanding. The two houses and the Deuteronomy 32 worldview are essential to understanding the end times. And you're in them. You're in them. And I know lots of people have told you that throughout the years. None of them had the waypoint markers that we have today. None of them have had those markers. And I used to tell people we're not in the end times because those markers were missing. A couple of the key markers were missing until I found Ellis Skofield. Then I'm like, oh, crap. The scriptural marker we've been hunting for, the two of them, are in the past. So, okay. Let's continue. I'm just quick rabbit here. Alan says also, once upon a time, the Gileadites or whatever, they're at war with Ephraim and Israel. And the Gileadites took the passage of Jordan before the Ephraimites. And it was so that when those Ephraimites, which were escaped, said, let me go over, that the men of the Gilead said unto them, art thou an Ephraimite? And if he said, nay, then said unto him, say now, Shibboleth. And he said, Sibboleth, for he could not frame to pronounce it right. He couldn't pronounce it correctly, the Ephraimite. The Ephraimites seem to have had trouble pronouncing the letter H. And many Ephraimite people still have trouble with that H, especially the modern Cockneys. And what he's tracing is spiritual markers of a people. Okay, there's certain indications in their culture, in their nature, in their character that stick with them. So he's tracing that. And as a people, they seem to have trouble with that same letter. Again, standing all on its own, no big deal. Standing as one of the bricks in the wall he's been building, big deal. The Gileadites seem to have worst Israel in its war, which we have referred, but according to prophecy, there was to come a time when Ephraim would never more be conquered by a Gentile nation. Now that's in prophecy. And it must have been to this end that the Lord, Yahweh, told the islands to keep silent. He's already, read that part of the prophecy to us. He says, until my people renew their strength. Excuse me. So keep silent until your strength is regained. For of this same people, this Israel that is dwelling in the isles, Yahweh says, quote, behold, all that were incensed against thee shall be ashamed and confounded. They that strive against thee shall perish.
they shall be as nothing. Thou shalt seek them, even them that contended with thee. They that war against thee shall be as nothing, and as a thing of naught. For I, the Lord thy God, Yahweh thy Elohim, will hold thy right hand, saying unto thee, Fear not, I will help thee. Fear not, thou worm Jacob, and ye men of Israel, I will help thee, saith Yahweh. Isaiah 41, verses 11 through 14. This is one of the places why we're going through this study. If you're a Jew today and you read that, you think he's talking about the Jews. No, he's talking about Israel, the northern kingdom. Well, the Jews will say, well, we're Israel. No, you're not. You're Judah. Not my opinion. Yahweh's pronouncement repeatedly over and over again through his prophets. So the people in the physical nation we call Israel today are not Israel. They're Judah. This is important because when you read the prophets, if you think Jews, when you see Israel, you will misunderstand prophecy. Why is that important in the new covenant, Joe? The Messiah told you, my gospel is the kingdom of Yahweh, and I was sent but to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He was not sent to the Jew. Well, Joe, that's because they've discarded the Jews. No, that's because the Jew is still engaged to the Messiah and to the Father. They're still married. They are still a married bride. Even though they be in rebellion to the covenant, they're not divorced. But the northern kingdom was, and that's what it means by lost. Yes, you're lost spiritually and physically as well, on earth as it is in heaven. So whatever happens spiritually is going to have an earth reflection. Alan has noticed this. He's not alone. He's tracing through scriptures with this key understanding. We are dealing with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. But the prophets talk about the house of Israel in far times from when they're writing. In the times past to us now in a lot of cases, but also now. So this is one of the things we've got to get in our heads as the ecclesia, as the body of the Messiah. Because this is going to be important. It's going to help us, if it's properly understood, it'll help us strengthen our faith and get ready for what is now on us. Not nigh at the door. It has come through the door. It's on us now. So Alan continues, this is when Balak, the king of Moab, hired Balaam to curse Israel, and he could not, but was compelled by Yahweh to bless Israel. He said, quote, God brought him forth out of Egypt. He, Israel, hath, as it were, the strength of a unicorn. Now, hold on. We're going to come back to that in a minute. He shall eat up the nations, his enemies, and shall break their bones and pierce them through with his arrows. He crouched. He lay down as a lion, and as a great lion. Who shall stir him up? Blessed is he that blesseth thee, and cursed is he that curseth thee. Numbers 24, 8 through 9. All right. Blessed is he who cursed thee, not the Jews. Blessed is he who blesses Israel, the northern kingdom. Cursed is he who curses Israel, the northern kingdom. Now, there are a great many Jews who took the new covenant at the time of the Messiah and were grafted in to the renewed kingdom, which is the kingdom on earth at that time. And I know a lot of people are waiting for it to come in the future. If you don't understand Deuteronomy 32, worldview, and the two houses, you don't realize you have been in the kingdom since at least the ascension. Messiah said so, not us, not me, Messiah. It's in the Bible when you understand the concepts we're dealing with here. But now, this is going to be important to us. Numbers 24, 8. I'm going to go to Bible Hub. Let me just blow this up for us. And it says, a wild ox, 72:14 in Strong's Concordance. And it tells us that the King James translates this as a unicorn, but it isn't. It's wild ox or wild oxen. It's a wild bull, not a unicorn. But that's a misunderstanding of the translation of the Hebrew. We know better now than we did at that time. Why is that important? Well, it's going to taint the way some of what we're about to read should be understood. So if you see unicorn,
Don't go thinking, oh, well, see, the Bible's just a joke because there's no such thing as unicorn. No, it's a misunderstanding. Hebrew for a long time was an all but extinct language. It people were trying to read it later on and misunderstood. And a lot of the motifs that we're going to carry on through here, a lot of the symbols are going to be part of that misunderstanding because this is an ancient misunderstanding. It goes back a long time. So, back to the book. Now, it is a most remarkable fact that two of these racial emblems, the lion and the unicorn, which were given to Israel with the compulsory blessing, are in the coat of arms of Great Britain. This insignia or national seal is, in part, the Harp of David. The Harp of David is in the coat of arms for England, which was brought to the Isles by Dan and Simeon, with the unicorn reared up on the one side and the great lion on the other. The lion is both Judah's and Israel's. So also the unicorn, not only Israel's, but Joseph's. And yet, in a special sense, it belongs to Ephraim. Well, this is because Ephraim is the head of Joseph. Joseph is the head of Israel. Ephraim holds the birthright over Manasseh, but together the tribe of Joseph, Ephraim, Manasseh, have the birthright as well, with Ephraim over Manasseh. It says, because he had the precedence in birthright. Thus Moses, on the day of his death, while he was reiterating and enlarging upon the prophecies and promises made by Jacob to each of the tribal heads, said concerning the blessing of Joseph, quote, his glory is like the firstling of his bullock, and his horns are like the horns of, not the unicorn, like the bull. And with them he shall push the people together to the ends of the earth, and they are the 10,000s of Ephraim, the thousands each of the 10 tribes, and the thousands of the one tribe, Manasseh. So the 10,000s of Ephraim, 10 tribes, and the thousands of Manasseh. So it's not necessarily meaning that there are going to be more people within Ephraim than Manasseh. It means that all 10 tribes belong to Ephraim, but only the tribe of Manasseh belongs to Manasseh. It's a figurative number. The English have not only the lion and the quote-unquote unicorn, the bull, but they have also that which to them may mean only a circle divided into 4 quarters. Still, it is really reproductive of Ephraim's cake. Remember, he thinks the Ephraim's cake has that cross on the top, and he thinks that the cake unturned is that type of a cake. The problem with that is that's a different type of baking, okay? And this is a case where the imagery could apply to both. So I'm not going to say he's wrong or I disagree with him. I think what it is it's a dual imagery, which in our Greek inherited logic doesn't make sense. Has to be one or the other. But in a Hebraic, spiritual, pixelated way of thinking, those two understandings fit perfectly. It's just 2 different pixels of the same picture. So that logic makes perfect sense to the Hebrew mind. So here we go. And it's Ephraim's cake. See the cut. In one of these quarterings is David's harp, and each of the other there are lions. This is the picture he's giving us. This should be a bull over here, not a unicorn. And then in the middle, they have the quartering, which is also a cross. So this circle would be the loaf of bread with the cross cut in the top, which is actually done to help cook the bread. But this is when you bake the bread in an oven. A lot of the bread that was cooked in the ancient times was cooked on top of the oven in the house. An oven was for a commercial baker. The ovens where you cooked bread in it. The type where you cooked it on it, that's the type of cooking you did in your own personal home. So you have to understand how they prepared meals back then. And again, this study assumes that you're up to speed with us and you already know what we've covered. Alan continues, that Manasseh was a separate tribe is known from the following, quote, there was also a lot of the tribe of Manasseh, for he was the firstborn of Joseph, Joshua 17:1. Also from the following, quote, for the children of Joseph were 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. Therefore, they gave no part unto the Levites in the land, save the cities to dwell in, with their suburbs, Joshua 14:4. So Manasseh and Joseph are 2 different tribes, 2 different houses. And there are 2 sides of Manasseh. Remember, Manasseh has on both sides of the river. That's going to be important. Just consider the river to be, the Atlantic Ocean. Thus was the land divided by lot as the Lord commanded.
quote, "But unto the tribe of Levi, the priests, Moses gave not any inheritance. The Lord God of Israel was their inheritance. Thus, with Joseph's 2 tribes, which has his promised double portion, there were 13 tribes in Israel and only 12 divisions of the land." Well, technically not quite. Dan had 2 divisions, and so did Manasseh. But it was still considered, this is Manasseh's property, this is Dan's property. So depending on whether or not you're looking at it physically or conceptually. So there were 13 tribes in Israel, only 12 divisions of the land. So the Levites could have no land inheritance, but they had the Lord, which was far better. And they were allowed to eat the meat of sacrifice from off the holy altar. But Manasseh was not only a separate tribe, but as a partaker of the birthright blessing, he and Ephraim were to grow together until they became a multitude in the midst of the earth. Then he was to be separated from his brethren and become a great nation. Now, it does not tell us that Manasseh becomes separated. In fact, if we look at the pattern, it is more likely that Ephraim will leave Manasseh. Okay, this is the reason of the prophecy, quote, "Joseph is a fruitful bow, even a fruitful bow by a well, literally by water, whose branch runs over the wall. Thus Yahweh, God, said, let the blessing come upon the top of the head of him that was separated from his brethren." All right. The top of the head of him who was separated from his brethren is not Manasseh. It says Joseph is the fruitful bough. Joseph is separated from his brethren. He becomes, but what that means is, Alan's got this slightly wrong, in my opinion. It's not that you're necessarily physically separated. You were separated out and become the head of the household, which makes you separate in standing within the house of Jacob. But Joseph is the fruitful bow or bough. Well, Joseph is the figurehead of Israel. So it's not just the tribes of Joseph. It's all the northern kingdom that is going to go over the wall. Do you remember the parable the Messiah says? There was a man, he built a vineyard, Israel, and he put a wall around it, the physical borders of the land, of the Holy Land that was promised to them. And a well. The well is the word of Yahweh. And he went on a great trip and he came back. Well, he set Israel up and he let them to see whether or not the caretakers, meaning his people, would take care of his kingdom. Well, that's the wall around the physical nation of Israel, and the word there, the word of Yahweh in the well, that's the wall over which Joseph will go. He'll leap over that wall. He'll grow over that. In other words, the house of Joseph, the house of Israel, is not going to stay within the Holy Land, but Judah will. So hopefully you're seeing this. Continues, since there are 13 tribes in Israel, and since Ephraim and Manasseh were adopted after all the rest were born, and Ephraim is counted for Joseph, or rather that they are counted interchangeably. Joseph and Ephraim can be interchangeable in prophecy. There is no other chance for Manasseh, numerically speaking, but that he is number 13. Now, it is a significant fact that when Manasseh separated from Ephraim, when the people who have become a great nation separated from those who have become a company of nations, because their branches have continued to run over the wall, he, Manasseh, or America, had just 13 states, and that 13th is the prominent number in all of the emblems and heraldry of the land. So he thinks that the United States is Manasseh. No, cannot be. There's a lot of reasons for that. We'll get to this on the last day of this study. I've looked at it. We got 2 more chapters in the book. So the 14th and 21st will be the last 2 chapters of our book. The 28th will be when we wrap this study up. I'm not going to argue over this right now because Alan didn't have everything he needed in history to understand at the time he's writing. He's doing the best he could with what he had at that time. Because he quotes here, he says, he also shall become a people. He also shall be great. Genesis 48:19. And now, this is where he's going to go to try and explain some of this. But in the process, I think he gets himself confused. And he argues for this seal. At this point, I want to show you something. This is the Great Seal of the United States. Before Alan explains it, I want to show you something. A lot of people say that this olive branch and the arrows are emblematic of Manasseh. So this proves we're Manasseh. Be careful with that.
because the olive branch is also Israel. And the arrows, well, let me show you another thing. We'll come back to this in a minute. Let me drop this down. I want you to remember a passage in Scripture, Zechariah 9:13. For I, Yahweh, have bent for myself Judah as a bow, as the weapon of war, and I have filled it with Ephraim. What do you put in a bow? Arrows, right? Ephraim's children are referred to as arrows in the prophecies. So Ephraim is also an arrow, his children. Israel in the olive branch, Israel, Ephraim's arrows here in the foot of the eagle. Those are not just symbols. They are symbols of Manasseh, but not just Manasseh. The other thing that Alan's going to explain his interpretation of this symbol. But notice, there's also in prophecy where it says the woman will be carried away on the wings of eagles. And it also says that Yahweh says, I will lift you up on eagle's wings, lift you, Israel, up. This is a symbol of Israel right here with the rays and the stars. And a lot of people think this is a cloud, and originally it was drawn as a cloud, but it's also in a lot of the drawings, it's symbolic of the moon. In both cases, this is still Israel. This is symbolic of Joseph's dream, his imagery, where the moon and the sun, because these rays are rays of the sun. Those are sunlight. The stars are symbolic of the individual tribes of Israel and everything. So this is Israel lifted up on eagle's wings. And down here we have Israel is the olive tree, and we are the arrows of Ephraim. But the arrows are also going to be given to Israel as part of the birthright. So no matter how you want to look at the biblical heraldry, this sign, this great seal of the United States, screams House of Israel. If you understand the heraldry in the Bible, it's just screaming House of Israel. Let me drop all this around and put everything back up. We'll continue. So Alan says the first national flag of those original United States had 13 stars and 13 bars for the colonies, right? Well, originally the Carolinas were one colony. They had to be split because they were too great to manage in the time of the colonies. So that's like the house of Joseph had to be split, or Manasseh has two, whatever. The bars symbolize the union, and the constellation of 13 stars was intended to symbolize the nation formed of 13 independent states. That right there should have caught Alan. That's a company of nations. Literally. That is the literal English explanation of a company of nations. Independent states. Well, that is not what England is. England is not a federation. England is a kingdom. So all the different nations are under the same crown. That's one kingdom. But the United States is a federation. That means that each state is an independent nation unto itself. And until after World War II, there were only 48 of them. A nation of priests. Literally. Charlie, do you see where I get the imagery of the 48 states being a nation of priests?
48 states being a nation of priests.
How many cities did the Levites have?
Oh, yeah. Okay, there we go. Yeah.
They had 48, right?
Yeah.
So each state is a city.
You're
a nation of priests, but you're also a company of nations all at the same time. The book that we're reading with the pixelated spiritual philosophy, does that click for you now?
Yeah. That would
what
fit.
You and I were saying is just Johnson is putting into a more formalized language for us. He's just putting structure around it that we can use to share in a common language. That's all he's doing.
Yeah. And this book is not for the average person, because I'm lost now, because he's now using formal logical annotation, and I don't understand that. So
I was in my wheelhouse.
Yeah. For you, I was thinking about you. I'm like, oh, Joe understands all this stuff. I don't.
Went right through it.
I've done some logic and programming and things like that, but I've not had a formal logic like that.
I'll help you with that later. You know what you're looking at. You just don't understand the letters.
Yeah.
You understand the concepts behind those letters. Anyway,
I'm sure, but
before I get us too far astray, let me continue with this. So all this imagery here screams Joseph, house of Israel. And also there's a prophecy that says Ephraim will be many years without a king. Per Allen's own exegesis of the prophecies, Israel has had a king ever since the breach was formed, when Tia Tephi went with Jeremiah to marry the Perez, the lineage of Perez or whatever, the thread hand or whatever. The crown has been with the house of Israel ever since, in England. So when did Ephraim go without a crown, without a king? When they moved to the New World, this place, the United States, North America. That's when Ephraim set up without a king. For a little while, they had the crown, but yes and no. They were charter colonies, and they were fighting the crown because the crown wasn't representing them, and that's what led to the revolution. So anyhow, we're going to keep going. In this seal, the great seal of our country, the United States, as represented above, we have the arms and crest of the United States of America. We would first call your attention to the fact that the eagle is holding in what is called the dexter talon, an olive branch. In the 14th chapter of Hosea, the prophet, who has so much to say about lost Ephraim Israel, we have the following, quote, O Israel, return unto Yahweh thy Elohim. I will heal their backslidings. I will love them freely, for mine anger is turned away from him. I will be as the dew to Israel, not Judah. He shall grow like the lily, the national flower of Egypt, and cast forth his roots as Lebanon, royal cedars. His branches shall spread, and his beauty shall be as the olive tree. Ephraim will say, what have I to do any more with idols? Ephraim is representative of the house of Joseph, which represents all of Israel. And we have placed this scripture before our readers that they may see that the olive tree is among the insignia of the Birthright family, and that it is here represented as belonging to one of the branches of the Birthright kingdom. And Joseph, one of the branches of Joseph. And since the birthright is Joseph's, it is the olive branch of Joseph, which has been placed in the coat of arms of Manasseh, the 13th tribe in Israel, who has now fulfilled the prophecy of becoming a great nation. I disagree with him. The United States is Ephraim. Ephraim will push the people to the ends of the earth, westward. Push them to the ends of the earth, westward, westward, westward. At the time of the writing of the Bible, China was known. India was known. Quote unquote, the New World was known of, but nobody really lived there. No civilization lived there. That's the ends of the earth. That's where Ephraim pushes the people. There are a lot of prophecies that have been left out. This is just a case of we have more information now than Allen had at the time he was writing. Plus, he missed a few of the prophecies. There are a couple in there. Ephraim will have no king for many years. We've been 400 years without a king in this nation. Ephraim will push the people to the farthest reaches of the earth. That's here, farthest west. You go any farther west, you're going east. Ephraim will, what was the other? Oh yeah, he'll become the strongest of the two houses of Joseph, and we did. We're stronger than England ever was. There are a lot of reasons in the prophecies. You got to read Hosea. A lot of reasons that this has to be Ephraim over Manasseh. All right, bottom of the hour break. When we come back, we're likely to go a little long today. This is a long chapter. We'll see you in 3 minutes. All right, welcome back. But before we go back to the book, I want to bring this up and show you something here a little bit better if I can. This is the seal of England. Notice that they have the Lion of Judah, which wears the crown, and this should be a bull. So this is the unicorn, but that should be a bull. And then you have the four sections. So you have kind of like a cross here, which they're seeing as the cake of Ephraim. But you have the harp of David, and this goes all the way back to Ireland. And then you have all these lions, these three lions. If you have three lions with a forked, a little spiked tail, like a devil tail, a little arrow type tail, that's also symbology of Dan, house of Dan. Dan judges his people, remember? So all of this imagery that you have in the seal of England is very indicative, not of Ephraim, but of Jacob, of the kingdom David and Solomon ruled over, the United Kingdom. Not just United Kingdom of Great Britain and all of its nations, but this is the healing of Ezekiel 37, at least in a physical sense. And Alan seems to have missed that for whatever reason. He didn't catch that in his work. I don't expect everybody to get everything. I'm benefiting from their work. I'm coming along and just adding to it. So no big deal. Back where we left off. He's going to admit something I've already told you. He said, we were talking about the olive branch. He says, still, that fact about the olive branch, if it stood alone, might not mean so much. But in the other talon, which is called the sinister, is a bundle of 13 arrows, which represents the nation individually and collectively prepared for war. It is marvelous that the olive branch should have been made our official insignum of peace, and that the arrows should have been made by law to represent the war power of the country, for the arrows were in the heraldry of Israel, as well as the unicorn/bull and lion, when Balaam was compelled to bless instead of curse them. Also, the Josephites were bowmen, and Jacob, after speaking of Joseph and his branches, said, quote, "The archers have sorely grieved him and shot at him and hated him, but his bow, munitions of war, abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty Elohim of Jacob." Genesis 49, 23, and 24. It is well known and much rejoiced over the fact that the bow of the United States, which has sent her arrows into the ranks of her enemies, has always abode in strength, and that both her chief men and people have always said, God has helped us. And we have. Our leaders, even when they're not visibly faithful believers, have credited God for helping us achieve our victories throughout our history. When Israel marched through the wilderness, she had 4 standards that were called camp standards. Now, if you remember when we were talking about Ezekiel and his vision of these creatures that had the 4 faces, we talked about how they marked the 4 directions of the compass, north, south, east, and west, and how they aligned to the camp of Israel in the wilderness. Hold on. There's a reason that we see it that way, and we're not the only ones that understand this. Alan continues. One of these was on the north. One of these standards was on the north, one on the east, one on the south, and one on the west. But there were, besides these, a family standard or ensign for each tribe. Hence the Lord commanded, saying, every man of the children of Israel shall pitch by his own standard with the ensign of their father's house. Afar off from the tabernacle shall they pitch. Numbers 2:2. So each tribe has a standard, and each division of 3 tribes has a standard over it, the head of those 3 divisions. So like Dan was the head of his division. Judah is the head of his division, et cetera, et cetera. Ephraim is the head of his division. The object of the camp standard was that when the time came to camp or pitch their tents for the night, the 3 tribes which belonged to each of these 4 camp standards might gather to them. They understood where they were at. It also helps in battle. Those standards still tell you where those people are today. The compilers of our reference Bibles understood this. Hence, they have given the reference to the 4 living creatures of Ezekiel 1:10 as follows, quote, as for the likeness of their faces, they 4 had the face of man, Numbers 2:10, and the face of a lion, Numbers 2:3, On the right side, they had the foreface of an ox, Numbers 2:18, and on the left side, they had the foreface of the eagle, Numbers 2:25, north, south, east, and west. The reference of the lions reads, quote, and on the east side, toward the rising of the sun, there shall they of the standard of the camp of Judah pitch throughout their armies. So Judah's going to be the lion. It was a dying Jacob who gave the lion to Judah as the ensign of his royal house in the following, quote, Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone tip. He stooped down, he crouched as a lion, and as an old, great, stout lion. Who shall rouse him up? Oh, this is truly wonderful. For mark this, when his race was young, Judah, as a lion's whelp, took a leap with Dan from Palestine to the Isles, and now he is there as an old lion. And the question is, who shall rise him up? I did a boo-boo here. This should have been a different color. So we'll deal with that later. So what we're basically saying is Judah has already fulfilled that prophecy. The fact that we find Judah's lion with the unicorn of Ephraim, Israel, in the national seal of the British or covenant people is among evidence that the royal remnant of the Judeo-Davidic house found their way to Ephraim, Israel at the time of the uprooting of Pharez line, who was then and now living in the Isles of the Northwest. Alan's already gone through all of this. And it is also another evidence that the Saxon nation are the nations of Israel upon whom lighted the divine word. That's where the word of the gospel came, who is also the Lion of the tribe of Judah. That's the Messiah. The Saxon people received the gospel strongest because they're the lost sheep of the house of Israel, to whom the Messiah sent the apostles to spread the gospel. And when Paul is said to be, well, he's the apostle to the Gentiles. No, he's the apostle to the nations. Most of the other apostles went to the Jews. What? Yes, they went to the Jews. Paul went to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. We'll get to that. The reference from the ox in Ezekiel is as follows, quote, on the west side shall be the standard of the camp of Ephraim according to their armies. Here again, we have the representative of Joseph, the birthright holder, of whom Moses said, quote, his glory is like the firstlings of his bullock. The Hebrew word that is here translated bullock is the same as that in Ezekiel 1:10, which is rendered ox. In fact, there is but one word in the Hebrew, shur or shawar, for ox, bull, or cow. Actually, there are more than one. There's no such thing as unicorn. But the above shows us that the family ensign of Joseph was a bovine. This is the reason for such expressions as, quote, Ephraim is a heifer that is taught, or, a trained heifer, and Israel slideth back as a backsliding heifer. It was also because of this fact that when Jeroboam and the house of Joseph wanted to make idols, which would be attractive to Ephraim, Israel, he made two calves, i.e. bullock and heifer. Also, that's connected to Baal worship as well. The heifer or unicorn of Israel is now in the national insignia of that people, but the family ensign still clings to them as a national nickname, quote unquote, John Bull. At that time that John Bull was a nickname for the English, Ephraim was still, when that name got applied to them, Ephraim was still living with them. That is before the split of the American Revolution. Thus far, it is clear that the lion of Ezekiel's vision was the camp standard of Judah, which was on the east, and the ox of his vision was the ensign of the family of Joseph, which was with Ephraim on the west. As we continue to investigate the signification of these four living creatures, we find the reference to the eagle reads as follows: the standard of the camp of Dan shall be on the north side of the armies. We have already shown, while explaining Ezekiel's riddle concerning the pulling down of him that was high and the exaltation of him that was low, that the eagle was at that time the ensign of the tribe of Dan, which is also why you find it throughout so many different places. Dan had gone out before time, so you're going to and spread into Greece and Italy, into Spain and into England and Europe and all this stuff. So that eagle is going to be found in a little bit in the Greeks, but you're going to find it in the Roman standard. You're going to find that eagle in Europe, like with the Nazis and their eagle. You're going to find that eagle in fascist standard of Italy. You'll find that eagle from time to time, even within England. You find it in the United States.
It's not that a lot of people say, well, that eagle is a pagan symbol. No, it is a symbol of the apostate northern kingdom. We have to remember history from a biblical perspective, a faithful biblical perspective. Doesn't make it pagan. It makes it apostate, rebellious. They've turned away from the true source and meaning of their emblem. And we've lost that in history unless we're looking for it properly. So it continues. It says, but since that time, they have used the leaping lion's whelp with the serpent's tail and the eagle. Like everything else that pertains to national Israel, has fallen to the Birthright family and is now the national ensign of the 13th tribe of Israel, the people of which are not only the descendants of Manasseh, the firstborn of Joseph, but they also compose the firstborn nation out of the many nations which were promised to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, and whose ensign eagle holds in his beak a scroll upon which is written their national motto, E pluribus unum, which has 13 letters and means out of one, or one out of many. Again, he thinks that the United States is Manasseh. He's already quoted the prophecies that make that impossible. We cannot be Manasseh. Can't be, because otherwise prophecy is broken. We'll get into that on the 28th. Therefore, concerning a certain land which is indwelt by a portion of Israel, we have the following, as the King James Version of the Scriptures. But ho, or hail, to the land shadowing with wings, which is beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, that sendeth ambassadors by the sea, even in the vessels of bulrushes upon the waters, saying, go, ye swift messengers, to a nation scattered and peeled, to a people terrible from their beginning. Note that hitherto a nation meted out or measured out by the time of prophecy, which is called the time of the Gentiles, and trodden down, whose home or ancient land the rivers. Now therefore, behold, the Lord bringeth upon them Israel, the waters of the river, strong and many, even the king of Assyria, and all his glory, and he shall come up over all of Israel's channels, and go over all his banks. This is Isaiah 18:8-7. It's confusing if you haven't studied this for a while. Essentially, though, Alan's going to explain. He says, they've spoiled. This is all inhabitants of the world and dwellers on earth. See ye, when he, the nation, shouted with its wings, lifted up an ensign. We have thus parenthesized Isaiah 18:8-7 and Isaiah 18:1-3. They mushed them together for us, so that our readers may know that this land, which has set up an ensign of outstretched wings, was a land in which Israel was dwelling. For it was the king of Assyria who came upon Ephraim, Israel, overflowed his land, and led him into captivity. Okay, well, at the time that Rome started using the eagle as a symbol, there were Israelites dwelling within the leadership class of the Roman Empire. They came from Troy. And you're going to have an eagle in the Spanish heraldry. There were Israelites living there. You're going to have an eagle in Germany. There were Israelites living there at the time that eagle became their standard. And that's the key. When you trace the migrations of Ephraim, the northern kingdom, you're going to find they bring that eagle with them. And in the historical archaeological records, the people that they either moved in with or conquered and took over from didn't have that eagle as a symbol prior to the arrival of those migrating tribes. So this prophecy could apply to many places, not just the United States. It could apply to many periods of time throughout Israel's migration. I wish Alan had pointed that out, but that's okay. So he says, no wings except those which are spread out can be shadowing wings. Well, he's reading this literally now. And he says the shadowing wings of Israel's spread eagle are in the ensign of the United States of America. Hence, America is the land shadowed by wings, of which Isaiah wrote, whose ambassadors crossed the sea in vessels of bulrush, or literally of cauldrons which absorb water, i.e., the modern steamship. I don't like this. I don't like what he's doing there. He's reading modern times into the prophecy. We should guard against doing that as much as possible. You look for indications of the prophecy in modern times, but you don't take modern times and then read it back into prophecy. Hopefully you'll understand that there's a distinction. It says the shield, or the escutcheon, which is borne on the breast of the spread eagle, has 13 pieces.
called pales or paleways, which comes from the same word as palings or pickets. These 13 paleways are united by one at the top. The Lord said to Abraham, I am thy shield. So the shield is a representation of Yahweh. On the national seal of America, the great people above the shadowing wings and scroll is a cloud emitting rays of glory. Okay. Aaron spake unto the whole congregation of the children of Israel, and behold, the glory of Yahweh appeared in the cloud. Okay. So the cloud and the rays can be the glory of Yahweh. Got no problem with that. It's also, depending on how it's drawn, a literal, figurative, or symbolic or artistic depiction of Israel's Joseph's dream of Israel. It says, to our fathers, that glory cloud was significant of the presence of Jehovah or Yahweh. That glory cloud, which hung over Israel, guided those who had but just escaped from the Egyptian bondage, and it stood between them and their enemies. But this is not all, for this cloud of the American heraldry surrounds what is called the constellation. We're going to come back to this picture here in a minute. It says, this constellation is a group of 13 stars or planets on a field of azure sky, which is exactly the same number of planets that appeared in the azure sky in the dream of Joseph, which drove him into separation from his brethren. Actually, no, it's not. He had 11 stars. Alan made a boo-boo here. But it's an updating of that image, of that dream. So I got no problem with that. Any one of these features in the blazonry of our nation might have been a coincidence, but when we see there is not a single feature but that which is Joseph and Israelitish, it is simply outstanding. What he's saying is, if you take each of these symbols by themselves, no big deal. When you look at them as a whole, when you look at the whole seal, that screams Joseph. But when we turn our face upon the reverse side of the great national seal, we are overwhelmed, for there stands the great pyramid of Egypt, which is one of the two great monuments of Egypt, the birthplace of Ephraim and Manasseh, the Egypto-Israelitish sons of Joseph. This could also be representative of Christianity, where the Gentiles are allowed to be grafted into the house of Israel through the birthright, Joseph. The sons of Jacob, the sons of Isaac, the sons of Abraham, and marvel of marvels, the national crest of England has that other great monument of Egypt, the Sphinx, on its reverse side. Thus do the people of Great Britain and the United States of America, the brother nations, by that which speaks louder than words, for signs are arbitrary, say that they are the offspring of the Egypto-Israelitish holders of the Abrahamic birthright. The people of the United States made this declaration by that which was made a law on Thursday, June 20th, 1782, for on that day the ensign which bears those shadowing wings of Israel, together with the heraldry of Joseph, became a law amongst us, meaning our great seal. Also, over the pyramid on the reverse side of the great seal of America is another 13-lettered motto, which, of course, is not only lawful, but also national, i.e. annuit coepitus. He, the Lord, hath prospered our undertakings. This also is Josephic, and we read that, quote, the Lord was with Joseph, and he was prosperous, a prosperous man. The Lord was with Joseph. That which he did, the Lord made it to be prosper. Genesis 39, 3 and 20 through 23. He's squeezing these scriptures down. Now, real quick, I want to show you something. There are a lot of believers who, oh, look, this is a pagan symbol, the all-seeing eye of Ra. It's also the all-seeing eye of Yahweh. What? Yeah, that the concept of Yahweh having an all-seeing eye, go read Zechariah. It's there. All the eyes on the wheels in Ezekiel's vision. So this is not us incorporating paganism. This is actually paganism incorporating Yahweh's symbolry. And I think that there's also like 13 piers to this pyramid or whatever. But yes, we're apostate, folks. As a nation, we've strayed from where we're supposed to be. But these symbols are for those who hunt Yahweh's people so that they can be found. And that's what this is all about. That's the importance here. Don't go thinking we're pagan in our origins. We're not. A lot of pagan symbols are turned. Satan is a mimic. He doesn't create. He takes over. He's a parasite. Okay, Alan continues. Those who understand the Kabbalah, and I don't like the Kabbalah, but listen to him. Those who understand the Kabbalah and the arithmography of the scriptures, the mathematical numbers, gematria, it is known that the number 13 is significant of rebellion. But all that we can say about it here is the first time this number occurs in the Bible, it is with reference to rebellion, Genesis 14:4. Surely that people whose characteristic number is 13 did rebel in 1776 and prospered in it too. They also prospered in 1814 in another little affair concerning the acquisition of a vast stretch of territory known as Louisiana. That's connected to the War of 1812. This people have also had rebellion within their own borders, and it is a remarkable fact that, although 13 was not the number of states in the Confederacy, the Confederate Congress in 1863 formally adopted a battle flag for the Confederacy and also Confederate flag. The battle flag was a white field with a blue cross of this X shape, the Tav, in which there were 13 stars, the 13 tribes of Israel. The flag for the Confederacy was white with a red field in the dexter chief corner bearing the same X cross with its 13 stars. So whether we like it or not, the flags of the Confederacy bear the same imagery of Israel, the cross, the tribes of Israel. Yes, I know it's about slavery. Just put the racial stuff aside. It's been used as a weapon to blind us, to keep us from being able to heal and to learn and to study and to see what we're missing. Set that aside and listen to what Alan's about to say. Here again, in both rebellion and the birthright cross of the house of Joseph. In his struggle, the government also prospered, and it was essential that it should thus prosper, meaning the North prevailed. Not only in this case, but also in the others which we have spoken, in order to fulfill a prophecy concerning one feature of their history. So why did the North have to succeed? Pay attention. Quote, show my people their transgression, and the house of Jacob their sins, all of Jacob's children. Is not this the fast that I have chosen, the feasting of repentance and all, to undo the heavy burdens and let oppressed go free, that ye break every yoke? Now, this is not necessarily talking just about what Alan's going to say here in a minute. This is also about spiritual bondage and spiritual slavery and breaking the yokes of all sorts of spiritual and physical bondage and slavery. This is about Jubilee. Well, Yahweh's people are supposed to free others, right? Okay. Alan says, these are the reasons for which our race go to war. And he's just let the, Cherokee Nation, the Cherokee, whatever. England freed her slaves in 1838 and America freed hers in 1861. And England has, and the United States has, gone to war to free other people and asked nothing more than the land in which to bury our dead. England tends to acquire colonies more than the United States does, but the United States still has that problem. The Philippines, Puerto Rico, Guam, et cetera, et cetera. Don't look for perfect fulfillment of these things. Look for tendencies. So Alan says, it has often been said that the brothers would quarrel. Ephraim consumes Manasseh, Manasseh consumes Ephraim. Judah and Ephraim did, and so have Ephraim and Manasseh. And the troubles to which we have thus far alluded have been family affairs. When it comes to these family difficulties, that one will always conquer, which must do so in order to fulfill Yahweh's word. So when the family quarrels, the one who's going to win is the one that has to win in order to fulfill prophecy. But when it comes to war with non-Israelitish nations, whether it be to undo heavy burdens, to let the oppressed go free, to break the yoke of slavery, or for whatever reason, then the Israel of which we speak will always succeed, which is why England was never defeated until the United States, and the United States has not been defeated since, until after World War II, when we started acting like a godless nation. And then we weren't defeated, we surrendered, we gave up. But this will tell you that, if Germany is fighting England, World War I, World War II, those were battles amongst people who were at that time still the remnant of the Northern Kingdom. They can fight amongst themselves. Okay. But now in Japan, Ephraim handled Japan all by himself in World War II. We didn't need the English. We didn't need the they helped, and they were brothers, but it wasn't necessary. The United States could have squashed Japan all by itself. That's known. But we see in the Japanese have nothing to do with the Northern Kingdom of Israel at this point, and as it moves throughout the world. And there's been other places where we fight these battles. When the United States defeated Islam in the early parts of our country's heraldry, the Barbary Pirate Wars, we had nobody helping us. We put Islam down. They're not descendants of the Northern Kingdom. They're descendants of Abraham, but not of the Northern Kingdom. So we've got things like this going on. I'm going to finish this little section, and then we're going to take a quick 3-minute break and come back and wrap up this chapter. So whatever side has to win is going to win. It's all to fulfill Yahweh's prophecy. It says, for it is literally fleshly Joseph Israel, of whom also is the spiritual Israel, of whom it is said, quote, no weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. That doesn't mean just the Jews, but it means Israel. Also the following, quote, the remnant of Jacob shall be among the Gentiles in the midst of many peoples, as a lion among the beasts of the forest, as a young lion among the sheep, who, if he go through, both treadeth down and teareth in pieces, and none can deliver. Thine hand shall be lifted up upon thine adversaries, and all thine enemies shall be cut off. Micah 5:8-9. So the remnant of the house of Israel will be sorted throughout all the nations. And if that remnant decides to stand up, nobody can stand against it. That's prophecy. All right, Charlie, let's take another 3-minute break. When we come back, we'll wrap up this chapter. Okay, we've just got couple more pages left. We're going to finish this chapter. But before I do, I want to remind you, as Ephraim moves west throughout all the nations, he leaves people behind, but he keeps moving west. The northern kingdom, the 10 tribes of Israel, as they move west to fulfill the prophecy, they're heading to England, and then they will eventually go to the United States. That's going to fulfill prophecy. That's the land where Ephraim finds its final rest and through the Valley of Acorn, all that stuff. Alan's traced this already. As they move west, they leave remnants behind them, and then they continue to move west. But that remnant that is left behind is no longer the focal point of the movement of the kingdom of Yahweh. Most of those nations remain nominally Christian up until just recent times. That we started to fall away from that in 47, 48, and it just accelerated after 67. Those are two pivotal key point times in our history that can be pegged to biblical prophecy, but it's at that point that the falling away accelerated. So up until that point, though, everywhere that Ephraim marched through becomes nominally what we would call Christian. That's the kingdom growing, folks. That's the kingdom going forth and conquering. Yes, they move east as well as the missionaries move east and everything, but primarily the northern kingdom is moving west. So when the remnant is left behind, the devil comes in and starts to slowly nick away in the vanguard and toward the rear of what's already been conquered. But he doesn't have much success in front of this westward movement because that's the part that's being conquered. So I want you to, hopefully you'll understand what I'm trying to explain, because it'll make sense of where Alan's about to go here. He says, it was in fulfillment of these promises, the promises that we just read before the break, that Napoleon, the hitherto victor, bit the dust at Waterloo. Well, he had to so that England could ascend. But that doesn't mean that Napoleon was necessarily a non-believer, or, he may have been in rebellion, he may be apostate or whatever. The point is, that's not the focal point of the kingdom spreading. And even if he is of a Christian France, he has to lose to the Christian England for the prophecies to fulfill. So this could be infighting between the brothers of the northern kingdom of the house of Israel. That's what I'm getting at. And I said, it was fulfillment of this promise that the American fleet entered Manila Bay and destroyed entirely the enemy's fleet with a loss of only 7 men. It was fulfillment of these divine truth that the American fleet destroyed the Spanish fleet in Cuban waters and lost only 1 man. It was that these promises might be fulfilled that Sam Houston, with only 750 raw recruits, fought the decisive battles against the Mexican army at San Juan Quinto, April 21st, 1836, in which he annihilated the Mexicans at one blow, killing 650, capturing 350, and putting the rest to flight, and yet losing only 8 men and 25 wounded. But space forbids to tell the many similar cases. The founding fathers said the same thing. They said we should have not won the Revolutionary War, except that the hand of Yahweh intervened, and hand of God, providence, intervened and helped them win. If you study the United States military's battles, I don't know about England, I don't study theirs that often, but if you study the United States battles, we have tended to win things that we had no right winning. And oftentimes, the weather or other natural occurrences have intervened to help us. So keep that in mind as we continue. It says, when the children of Israel were singing unto the Lord over the victory he had given them by destroying the armies of Pharaoh, they said, thou didst blow thy wind, the sea covered them, they sank as lead into the mighty waters. Who is like unto thee, O Lord, among the mighty ones? Who is like thee, glorious in holiness, fearful in praise, doing wonders? In the 41st chapter of Isaiah, where the Lord says to Israel in the isles, quote, they that war against thee shall be as nothing and a thing of naught. He also says, quote, thou shalt fan them, and the wind shall carry them away, and the whirlwind shall scatter them. So he's going to look at this and say, here's this, I'm going to tell you a story. This is the fulfillment of that prophecy. No, it's a earth shadow that fulfills that concept of that prophecy. So the whirlwind shall scatter thee. This is where the winds or storms help Yahweh's people prevail. So here's where Allen continues. He says, one fulfillment of this promise, so he's going to acknowledge Earth's shadow, of which there can be many, was the destruction of the invincible Spanish Armada when they went against the English in 1588, concerning which the American's encyclopedia gives the following, quote, the Spanish Armada sailed May 29th, but a storm compelled it to return, and it was not till the end of July that the two fleets met and joined in battle near the English coast. After a series of actions that lasted several days, the Spanish were utterly routed, the elements assisting the English. The underscores are ours, he's the part he's highlighting, as we wish to call your attention to how the Lord helped. This armada consisted of 130 vessels, all told, and was unequaled in its time. Israel and the Isles had not yet fully renewed their strength yet, meaning all of Israel, Jacob together. The history continues. Having left Lisbon for Corunna for stores May 29th, 1588, the fleet was dispersed by a violent storm, and though all the ships joined at Corunna, with the exception of 4, they were considerably shattered, so they were beat up and had to be repaired. Reports having reached England that the armada was completely disabled, the government ordered its own ships to be laid up, but Lord Howard, the admiral, opposed this order and set sail for Corunna, learning the truth, and his return continued warlike preparations. Soon after, being informed that the armada had hove in sight, he weighed an anchor and it passed Plymouth, July 31st, stood out in the rear and opened a destructive fire. Having the windward position, meaning the wind to his favor, and being greatly superior in speed, he was able to inflict serious damage without loss to himself. All the way along the channel, the English followed the armada with the same tactics, taking advantage of the changing winds, harassing the Spaniards, capturing 2 or 3 of their best vessels, and yet keeping all the while virtually out of reach. The Spaniards proceeded, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to stop here. You can go read this battle if you want on your own. The point is that the winds and Mother Nature allowed the English to prevail against a greatly superior foe. Well, there is a period in the American Revolution where the Americans had to cross a body of water amongst and in sight of a British armada. And they did it at night on a full moon. Had to be done. Well, mysteriously, a fog moved in and shielded the revolutionary forces from the sight of the British. And the fog also helped dampen the sound. And as soon as the Americans were on the other side of the water, the fog lifted and the moon came back out. This history of using natural things to help his people is one of the ways Yahweh works. It's in your Bible. The earth swallows people up, storms come, whirlwinds, pestilence. It is, if you follow the English, you're going to find ample opportunity there to see stories like this. But I follow the United States military, and there are tons of places where we just flat out should not have won, but we did. If you're following the prophecies, you can poo-poo this any way you want. But if you're following the prophecies, like Allen is, that's what we should expect if you are the focal point of Yahweh's people at that point in human history. If you're not, the focal point is going to win, no matter what. If the United States and Britain went to war right now, whichever is supposed to be the spiritual focal point would win, period. It's just ordained. It has to be that way. So this is the point Allen's trying to get us to see and understand, that it's prophetic in nature. He says, excuse me, the idiot over there thinks she hears something. Remember, these historic encyclopedic writers are not supposed to know that God has said that in order to defend his birthright people, he would send a wind to carry away this so-called invincible armada and a whirlwind to scatter them. Hence, their testimony is all the more striking. In other words, that even though they don't know about this, the people writing this article in the encyclopedia are using language very parallel and similar to the language found in the prophetic prophecies about protecting Yahweh's people, Israel. Well, that could very well be because the Spirit led them to write it that way for those who have eyes to see, to put the pieces together. So he says, surely the people of modern Israel who dwell in the isles might also sing unto the Lord, saying, thou didst blow with thy wind and carried them, their enemies, away, and the whirlwind did scatter them. Who is like Yahweh, glorious in holiness, fearful in praise, doing wonders? Well, truly, Jesus well said, if I had told you of earthly things and you believed not, how shall you believe if I tell you of heavenly or spiritual things? And then he's got a poem here, and I'm going to read it because this is an older poem. It says, still we call to our Elohim of old, Elohim of the far off Isaac line, our Elohim whose word doth make us bold to claim our heritage divine. Yahweh of hosts is with us yet. Doth he forget? Doth he forget? It cannot be that Isaac dies, his people and his kings depart. Before his Elohim the Saxon lies, glad and brave, both with contrite heart. Yahweh of hosts is with him yet. Doth he forget? Doth he forget? Call in him we are today, or called in him we are today, no longer passing through the fire, although we were but yesterday, as one of Nineveh and Tyre. The Lord of nations guides us yet. Doth he forget? Doth he forget? When battles rage, we cannot lose. God makes all men to stand in awe. Of Saxons now he doth use. The race to whom he gave his law. His battle axe we are as yet. Doth he forget? Doth he forget? Our fathers once did idols trust. Also their strength in iron shard. Now, though we number as the dust, we call on thee, Yahweh Elohim, to guard. For thou hast proved thy holy word. Show mercy to thy people, Lord.
So this is the end of that chapter. We're going to go into the next chapter next week. What he's trying to tell us, what Alan's trying to get us to see, is that if you understand the two houses, then you read the prophecies when it talks about the house of Israel or Israel in any of the prophets' language after the separation. Once that separation between northern and southern kingdom happens in time in human history, when the prophets talk about Israel, they're talking about the northern kingdom. So if you understand this and you read the prophets, a lot of those prophecies are going to be read differently. They're not talking about the Jews, and they're not talking about physical Israel today. They're talking about the northern kingdom. Now, this does not mean that the Gentiles are left out. Don't read into this more than I'm trying to explain. It's talking about the birthright, the holder of the birthright. The focal point is Joseph, the tribe of Joseph. And the focal point of Joseph is Ephraim. Ephraim holds all the birthright. Manasseh holds a little of it because the birthright's given to Joseph, but then it falls on Ephraim. You have to be grafted in through Ephraim. As it gets closer and closer to the end times in the prophecies and the prophetic utterances, Manasseh falls away. You don't see him in the end times prophecies. You see Ephraim. Where's England today? And England's still under a crown that is entirely apostate, that's renouncing Christianity and embracing Islam. So what's that mean? It tells us that the remnant of the southern kingdom of the united Israel that remains in England is falling away. All that remains of the house of Joseph, the seat of Joseph, is in what we call the Bible Belt today. What we call the Bible Belt, say the deep south, including the northern part of Florida down to maybe the line around Orlando, that little section of all the world, that is the most assured of their faith. When you ask them, are you positive that a God exists? There's only two places where it's more assured that God exists, and they're Islamic. So they're sure that Allah exists. Who is the most sure that Yahweh still exists? It's the Bible Belt today, which would be Ephraim, where Ephraim tried to secede from Manasseh, or the remnant of the rest of the kingdom. Now, that's what the Civil War was over. Taxation. Whether you want to believe it or not, that's what it was over. It was over taxation, states' rights, et cetera, et cetera. And Ephraim tried to succeed, and for once he lost. Exactly for the reason that Alan told us, because in order for the prophecies to be fulfilled, Ephraim had to lose that. But Ephraim, his prophetic nature has not varied, and he's still seated in the south. So when it says the south will rise again,
If you have spiritual eyes to see and ears to hear, what that's telling you is Ephraim will rise again. We're under assault from godless secular humanism and Islam in this nation. And oh, by the way, Texas is not part of the Deep South in that survey. They don't believe, they're not as sure of Yahweh's existence as the South is. We're talking about the Confederacy. The heart of the Confederacy is where that belief still remains. Virginia's even lost it. But otherwise, the heart of the Confederacy. If we're going to have any hope of anywhere in the United States resisting this assault of secular humanism and Islam, it's going to be in the Deep South with Ephraim. And if you understand the history of the scriptures in the Old Testament, we are repeating the fall of the Northern Kingdom for the exact same reasons. We're worshiping Baal, the god of war and money. We're worshiping Ishtar, Ashtoreth, the god of sexuality and androgyny. And we're worshiping Moloch, the god of child sacrifice. And we're being destroyed by the exact same peoples, the Assyrians, Islamics, who destroyed the kingdom the first time for the same reasons. Charlie, you got anything?
Yeah, that's so what you're telling me is I need to put up my rebel flag.
If you look at that rebel flag with a worldly thing, you're going to think, oh, white supremacist and racist. If you look at that flag through spiritual eyes, you're going to see Ephraim.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So, yeah, it's.
So next week, the twofold aspect of the prophetic Israel. Chapter 9, section 3, chapter 9. If you don't have anything else, I'll get us out of here because we ran long.
Oh, Monday's show will be under We Who Are Lost. So just arrange your programming accordingly, because I know normally that's a Road to Concord day, but we're still working our schedule. So turn the bells on.
Yes, if you subscribe and hit the bell, you'll know where we're at any given time. Because there's also there's a We Who Were Lost show brewing in my head right now too, and I don't know when I'll do it. I might just turn it on in the middle of the night one night and do the show, but yeah, if you don't have the bell on, you won't see it. But I got one brewing in my head that Charlie and I were basically discussing the show in the pre-show this morning. Is just I want to have a talk about the times we're in.
Yeah.
But anyhow, that's all I got, Charlie.
Bloop.
Thanks for being with us, folks. If you like what we're doing, please give us a thumbs up. If not, oh well. I mean, I don't want you to do it if you don't feel led to do so. Share the show if you think it's of value. If you think we're off in left field, hey, send me the scriptures. Show me where I got to test, what I got to check. Just do me a favor. Check what Alan's teaching you first, or how he understands the prophecies. Check it first. Go back and check and see, and show me the prophecy that he missed or what contradicts him or whatever, because I want to test my understanding of the world and of Yahweh's word against Yahweh's word, not the teachings of man. The only reason I'm bringing Alan to you is because I've read his book several times, tested him, and I can't break his argument. There are areas where I think he's a little, I disagree with him here and there, but his argument? No, dead on target. And anyhow, Monday, Charlie. Tuesday, we'll be back in Genesis. I think it's 48. And we may spend the whole day there. Wednesday, we're going to be in Matthew, I think, setting up to get into Matthew. It's not going to be a chapter by chapter, but we'll do sections of it here and there. I want to look concepts first. Before I do a whole chapter, chapter by chapter in a book study, I want to go through Matthew and looking at the core concepts of Matthew. And then we'll do Mark, Luke, John. And then we'll have a talk about Paul. And then next Friday, no show Thursday unless Charlie decides to do one. So that's what's coming. Hopefully you'll be with us. If not, until we see you again, y'all stay safe. Take care. We love you. Yahweh bless, and Shabbat Shalom, brothers and sisters.